Hello, folks. Glad to have you all with us. Today, we are going over WordPress 6.1. I am Courtney Robertson. I am a developer advocate here at GoDaddy Pro. WordPress 6.1 released a week ago, Monday, and WordPress 6.1.1 is due to come out on November 15th. So I thought this would be a really good time for us to kind of dig in and work together through some of the challenges and see what's going on inside of WordPress 6.1. I'm going to drop a link here in the chat for everyone to make use of. If you are watching this as a replay later, you might not see the link, but I'll tell you what it is so that you can use it as well. I have use of InstaWP. It's a fantastic WordPress hosting service that is built for sandbox testing like this. So it is a fantastic tool. I love the folks over at InstaWP. I use this on learn.wordpress, but I also can use it here for our event today. So that link is in the chat area. For those of you catching it on the replay, that link is app.instawp.io/launch != current-stable. app.instawp.io/launch !T = current-stable. So sorry about that. I missed that earlier T in there. So you've got the link, and hopefully that works out. If you would like to make use of that for testing purposes, you are welcome to do so. I maintain a couple of branches for those type of test links. When we get into beta and release candidate versions, I've got a link for testing those. I've got another that tests bleeding edge nightlies, which means whatever Core and the Gutenberg folks have been working on since yesterday, that build as well. So I really enjoy making use of that service, but today will be like a work along type of thing. I'll be going through a lot of the notes that I have on our blog post for this release. So if you want to look in, whoops, that was the core link. Let's try the GoDaddy blog post that I wrote about the release. That might actually help us get there. I am wide open for lots of your questions today. We're a bit of a small crew here in real time working together. But I would love for you to drop some feedback and some questions in the chat area as we get going, and I will do my best to respond. So got a question coming in already. I started getting a message in the site health tool that says the REST API encountered an unexpected result since this update. Oh, interesting, Brian. Brian, did you try? I actually bumped into a bit of a REST API snag as well myself. The REST API wasn't letting me save something when I was in the site editor. I don't know if you've encountered this, if you've bumped into the REST API doing anything else interesting while you've been working along or not. I would check through, of course, basic default testing environment. I would drop down to all plugins deactivated, except unless you want to run the site health plugin itself. So Core has site health built in, and I'm going to grab screen share. Let's go with screen share, and we'll share this one. Yeah. So here we go. The actual area that Brian is leaving a question for us about in this release is if I were to go into tools and then site health, and Brian is indicating in the chat area that we're getting a critical issue. And I can see what that is. In this case, this critical issue is because we're kind of in a sandbox hosting, I believe. So I would want to dig into that further. But it sounds like Brian's getting something in this area about REST API not working. If you also want more additional information, you can actually go get the site health plugin from the WordPress plugin directory, and it would tell you perhaps a little bit more specs. So the core features of WordPress do have the site health. I think the actual plugin is called Health Check, even though it shows up as site health over in the admin dash. If you go in and you look for Health Check, this is the same thing. It's just going to give you a couple more features. So I've already got that one installed in my test environment, and I could just activate it. I don't know if that's going to tell you much more, but the basic idea in testing things is that you drop down to basically no plugins if you can. Also roll back to one of the default themes. Always go clear your cache from your hosting side as well. clear your local cache, maybe test in incognito in the browser you don't use. Check and see if the behavior happens in that environment. The next step that I would recommend is roll over to something like staging and see if the same thing happens. If you've got ability to get to a staging environment, roll your site on over to a staging setup and then test exactly the same thing. If that still isn't solving it, that's the point at which you probably want to check in with your host, and or you would want to check in to the WordPress support forums and see. I would do a research over there and go to wordpress.org/support. Let's see, I think it's support. It might be listed a little bit differently these days. Nope. So we will go to this area under the drop menu because there isn't whatever I typed didn't get me where I wanted. So there we go. WordPress.org/support. And then I would start looking into REST API and seeing if any of these results show in the support forums, and maybe sort it by date and then check in. I'm seeing stuff that's quite a bit older. So some of the things may be marked as resolved. I don't want the docs. I want the forums by date. There we go. So I'd start checking into some of those topics and see if that looks about the same. Hope that helps, Brian, in terms of running a couple of tests. So I haven't encountered that exact problem. I did have a different situation, but I got that resolved. So try your best at testing out some of those things. I'm going to actually start us out. I'll deactivate this plugin so you can see I've got, let's see, what's my one active plugin? Beta tester. Yeah, that's fine to run. I'll let that one on. I'm not running any version of WordPress 6.1 that's newer than this. Actually going to start us checking out a classic theme first. So when I look at appearance themes, you'll see I have 2021 activated. For the sake of just a quick comparison, I'm going to go back to, we'll activate 2020. And when I look at the 2020 theme over here on the left-hand side, you'll see that I do not have template parts. If I wanted to customize one of the templates in this site, because this is what we've been doing for a long time in WordPress, if I said I was not happy with the way that the single posts were laid out or the footer of the site, in order to customize the footer of the site, you'll see it says theme file editor over here. I would have to go into, here's my theme. Don't recommend you actually live code this way. We're just testing today, just testing. But if we were to actually want to go and customize this, I would have to go into footer.php and I would scroll around in here just as an example. This is the 2020 theme. And I would look and you would see that there's this area that's like powered by WordPress. Clearly that's ending that. Here is powered by WordPress is listed here in the code. And if I looked at the front of my site, visit my site, and I jump down to the footer, if I wanted to change this thing that said powered by WordPress down here as the example, I would have to previously go into PHP and ideally write a child theme. And then in the child theme, override the footer file and do some work with that. You have some options these days. So one of the things that is exciting for people that have been around in WordPress a long time, if you would like to give people easier access to modify certain things in the footer for some reason. Let's say that you don't want your customer possibly to be modifying, expecting to do PHP files, but something that's as easy as swapping out a widget somewhere, the equivalent of a widget. Maybe you would like to make that block ready. Well, we've got a couple options. So in the footer of the site, if I didn't want to modify this with PHP, if I wanted to start moving my theme towards having some block options available for editing these parts, I now have some ways. In the past, we had the block editor just on posts and pages, and now it's starting to percolate out to the rest of your website. So to do that, I've already coded it into one of the themes I already have running. So I'm going to switch back to the 2021 theme because I've got parts of this set up. So I'll do a quick walkthrough to show you how we would do that. As an example of where we're going with this at the end, here's 2021 activated, and you see this extra footer down here. I'm about to show you how to put that extra footer in there. So that's what we're going to do as one of the first things. If you take a look on appearance on the left-hand side, you'll see that I have template parts enabled. I already have that on mine. If you go to set up a classic theme, meaning one that didn't use the block editor to lay the theme out, you won't see these template parts right away. So to get there, here is my code editor. And let me blow this up nice and big for people that have eyes like mine. I hope that my screen resolution looks good on the sharing window. It looks a little different for me as the host. It's like sharing it at a smaller resolution. So what I did was I've gone into my code editor. Now, this is just one that comes built inside of InstaWP as a service. If you use InstaWP, they give you SSH access if you're a paying subscriber, and you can hook that up to VS Code and do it all right in the code editor, which is pretty cool. But I'm just using the built-in free default option that they've got. I went to the 2021 theme, and inside of that, I did a couple things. The first thing that I did was go into my functions.php file. And in the functions.php file, at the very end, I've added in this little bit of code. I've linked to it in the GoDaddy Garage article that I've shared with all of you. But I added this function at the very end that enables those template parts. So all that does, again, I've worked a little ahead for the sake of not having to live code too much today. If I go into template parts, now that will be there, but just simply dropping that code into our functions.php file just turns on that item in the menu. So it would be blank at first. The next step is to create a folder called parts. So to be clear, you'll see that there is this folder called template parts. That's the like the older theme file structure. So I made a folder and called it parts. And inside of this folder called parts, I have footer.html. Well, how did I get that? All of this is code that is kind of HTML. We'll say it's mostly HTML. There's some div classes in there and things like that. So what I did, for the sake of being fast for today's example, is I went out to wordpress.org/patterns, pattern directory, and I found a footer pattern. Oh, look, here's a footer pattern. There's a couple of them in here. So if you didn't like any of these and you wanted to make your own, you could just go over to a post, start making a post that has, in this case, I see that there's 4 columns. Some of those columns look like they have some subheadings in them. Down below, I see some social icon blocks, etc. In this case, for today's demo, I am happy enough with this pattern that I will just hit copy. If you aren't happy enough with your pattern, go make it in a post, and then you can switch over and copy all your code inside the code editor. So to see what that is, some people forget about this little trick. I could go here and you'll see I've already got the code editor mode turned on. But if I had made, just for the sake of my example, if I had made this footer in a post, I would then go get my code from the code editor, copy it all. You could do either. Get it from the pattern directory, wordpress.org/patterns, or go make your own in any post. And then when you're done making it, copy your code, and you'll make a file and call it, in my example, I'm doing a footer. Call it footer.html. These files that are saved inside of the parts folder should be HTML files. So I already have my HTML file here, and I have saved that information. The next step is to tell the theme where to put it. So I want it in the footer. I've named it. I told it to turn on template parts, but I haven't actually gone into the pre-existing footer files to say, put this template part in this location. So I go into my footer.php file, and here I have added the exact code that I need. It is the block template part, and because my .html file was named footer, it says footer there. If I had named that header, it would be header in that quote. So I have injected that PHP information. Let's say maybe I would like to get rid of some of these other things like the site name and powered by WordPress. And let's see, is that closing out my divs correctly? Yeah, that looks balanced. So we'll delete this for the sake of demonstration. No, looks like I still have a closing div that I don't need in there. Double check. I think I have, yeah, we'll delete that div. Hopefully all works well. We'll hit save and let's hit refresh. Like right now, we still see that the powered by and site name and all that's down there. Let's hit refresh and oh, it's gone. That's great. So now I can, inside of a classic theme, I'm like, okay, I've at least started that process, right? Let's say now I want to modify it. If I go into template parts, I see the footer is there. And now I can get into this after the fact. Let's make my screen resolution a bit better. I could get into this after the fact and start doing some things like make this full width, make this container also full width. I could start changing out my heading sizes. I could change the words. You get the idea. So these things are not locked at this time. So you can choose to get in and start allowing folks certain amounts of the ability to modify some of these things themselves, even inside of a classic theme. So this is the bridge between how we've done WordPress for a very long time and where WordPress is going with the block editor. I'm spending time on this. It's a little code intense, but I'm spending that time to show you that, we can start getting in the direction of having some of these things ready and available so that our end users are able to modify some things. Like if they just need to change out a couple, like the social icon, the user might be able to do that without needing to go back to their dev to code that little part. So it's an on-ramp. So that's one of the features that I think is actually my most exciting, because I think it's that bridge between the things. But we have some other things to start looking into as well. Some areas I'll have time to explore, and some of them, if there's something in this that you really want me to demonstrate or show, by all means, let's do it. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. I should have jumped right to themes, and let's switch the theme. So this time around, one of the things that is new is that we now have the 2023 theme. This is a block-based theme from the beginning. So immediately you see that the editor is right here. We're calling this the editor or site editor. We have dubbed this whole area of using blocks in the theme as full site editing, or FSE, but we're starting to rename that, starting to try and change our vocabulary just down to site editor. The polyglots team in WordPress, the people that do all that translation work, have indicated if we just call it site editor, it makes it a lot easier to translate. So you'll hear me catching myself. When I come into this theme, this is the new theme for the upcoming year. And I've got preloaded some demo content on my site. When I come into this area, you'll see that, it looks like a pretty decent theme. There's a good bit of things that are already created or styled in there. But if I want to start changing out my styling at all, when I go to the top right and it says styles, I now have the ability to browse lots of different style variations. These areas are called style variations. What was really interesting this time around is that all of these style variations were made by contributors. So they put a call out inside of the themes team and said, we would like people to come by and help contribute. Would you like to make a style variation? So you see that there are lots of options. Some of them you might need to change a few bits as you go, like, the headings or something like that. The pink on pink doesn't quite work out accessibility wise, but there's a lot of things that I think are actually quite good in this. Some of them look very different in their font styles and things. So I like grapes. Sometimes I like aubergine. I'm waiting until we have like a good toggle of, let me set my palette for day mode and night mode. I would love to do that and then let it automatically detect whatever the browser and or user's device is set to. I'm a big fan of dark mode, but I don't like dark mode at certain times of the day. So pick out what you like as far as these themes go. Another thing that's kind of interesting with this one around is that we do get a few more font options that shipped with this release. So by that, I mean, if I am looking again, I'm just inside of styles and then typography. And we're still working on the web fonts API, having the ability to add in more fonts, but we've got a couple of those fonts showing here. So we have a few more. We're up to now 6 fonts that are here. Before we shipped just with Source Serif Pro and System Font, I believe. Now we see that we've got a few other types that are here. I like this IBM Plex Mono kind of thing for a lot of code or technology type of things. So maybe I want to get in and change those. So we have a few more font options that are showing there. So that's something that's new. And while I'm here, I'm going to hit save. What you'll also notice, I've been using full site editing, site editor, all of those terms since we started shipping. Let's say it was 5.7 or 5.8. When we first had one of the themes that began making a lot of full site editing available to us. So I noticed a couple subtle changes here already. We have more options and more uniformity in terms of our design and our interface on the right-hand side, as well as fluid typography. So the design tools are more consistent, meaning what we have for drop options, they're working on making that more consistent across the board. And when you factor in that that is hundreds of different blocks, block variations, nuances with settings for each of these blocks, it's a while to go. So they're really working on bringing that together in a more cohesive way. So no matter if you are looking at your sizes here, or if I like turning on list mode, look at my group block, and then switch over to this area under my block settings, having the more consistent experience of having the margins, the padding, the design interface for this has changed a bit, as has this border area and the radius, the styling of just how this right sidebar looks and what's over there in that right sidebar, whether it be under your block specific settings or under the style, which applies to the whole website, that is becoming more consistent. So expect to see more of those things tighten up over the next few releases. They made a lot of progress this time around. Of course, it doesn't quite catch all of them. So on the list that I saw, we still had a ways to go, but I would expect within the next major release or two, we'll have most of that in a nice uniform way. Related to that is the typesetting and the fluid typography. So fluid typography, the best thing that I can do actually here is to give you this video example. And this I got right from the core release post about this. So I will show you just this animated GIF of what this does, because it does a really great job at showing you as the screen size changes, how the font sizes change. Because on a mobile device, you might not need it to be truly 150 pixels tall. But on a big screen TV or a jumbo monitor, you might want it to look even bigger. So fluid typography is going to scale your fonts. And so that's an option that just kind of shipped with this release. You can find out a little bit more about it. But if you see over here on the right-hand side, it says for your font sizes, small, medium, large, extra large, etc. They do still give you controls to make things in pixels, Ms, and Rems, but they're encouraging also in defining what constitutes small, medium, large, and then doing that fluid typography look to it. So that's something that I think is actually going to be really helpful as folks are dealing with various screen sizes, everything from my Apple Watch up to a TV or projector. It's a lot to try and scale for. So that one actually looks pretty cool as well. Let's take a look at, let's see what I think else is next. More design tools across all the blocks. Yep. Here is the, let's see, here is the GitHub issue. If anyone is interested, I'll copy that link over for you. But about the, here is the tracking of getting more design tooling and consistency. And there are a lot of sub issues in all of this. And you'll see the measures of tracking that's there. There's also a post over on core, on make.wordpress.org/core in the release posts from this past release that sort of breaks it down more descriptively for those things. We can set a featured image inside of a cover block. Let me jump to templates where we can set this. So going to put us old school coders out of work, Brian says. Yeah, I know. That's the thing. So, Brian, instead of it being you out of work, you'll still have plenty of work in plugin customizations. As far as theme building goes, maybe it might be a little bit easier. There are theme generators. Theme.json is one of the files that you need to make these new styles of themes. So if I were to go looking, sorry if you hear my doggo barking in the background. If I go looking instead of in 2021, if I go into the 2023 theme, you'll see that there is a theme.json file in here. Let's close out these other tabs in my IDE because no need to confuse you all. Here we go. Here's theme.json, and it looks like JavaScript code for the most part. It's kind of simplified JavaScript code, I think. Title, blank, name, blog alternative. I haven't named my site. But when I go through this, you'll see here's the color palette and things. There are even theme.json generators. If you do a Google search, there's at least 2 of them that I know about that give you kind of a GUI interface and will create this theme.json file for you at the tail end of it. They are trying to keep up with what's going on inside of WordPress. And then over in fullsiteediting.com, Carolina has a fantastic resource that will help you even just create the whole theme right there for you. So it does, as Rob is saying, open up a lot of other opportunities. It lets you focus on some other things besides just making the theme parts here. So there's some good to that. While I'm in this templates area, I want to get us to see the featured image in the cover block, but I also want to show you what's new in these templates. This, I think, is fantastic. So if I look, here is all of the templates that come with my theme. For us old school theme coders that started with underscores or something like that, when we're in here and we're looking at these files, you have an index template, and then inside of other things, you have what does your default search page look like? So if I were to go into this, here is the styling for your search page. Whoops, let's do this. Here we go. I'll turn off some of these things here. So my search page is giving me a query block, and I don't think that's the right thing. Might be good to check over these. I might have to go report a couple things. So search results for search term are here. I get it. So this would be how it would display the results. So it's giving me columns. So in this query block here, let's turn on the list view and the query loop. Maybe I want my results from the search. If I were to do a search on this site, I want to style up what my search results page is. Maybe I want it to be lists instead of the query loop block the way that it was. So I could get in and do that, and I've been able to do that for a while. But what I like is that more of the templates are styled into this theme. You'll see a lot more templates available in this theme in particular. You'll also see that if you go to create an author page, that now your author page is no longer completely blank. It starts out having your default header at the top and a footer at the bottom. And in the middle, there's like whatever the archive type is. So in this case, I'm styling my author page. My username is LearnWP. So I would have posts that are in a query loop. There is the query loop that says, go get me posts that Courtney wrote or LearnWP wrote. And so I can style this page really to be however I would like that to be. You'll notice, for those of you that are still getting used to this idea of block editor in your themes, I use the list view all the time because I want to select exactly the things I want and I want to move it around and things. So you have a chance to lay things out all inside the block editor. And once you get really used to it, you can start using that / command so that you can add or insert a block pretty quickly. So we have that chance to change out that author page. But what happens if I wanted to add a new one? We have a lot more options showing over here. So I just started playing with this on my personal site. I should have pulled it up ahead of time, but I started to add in support for post formats because of all the things on WordPress. For some reason, I really gravitated to post formats. So now I can do post formats using the custom block template editor. So I can make a custom template for any type of taxonomy, any type of category, any type of author. If I go look under category, this site has multiple categories. So now what I have this ability to do is, do I want to make a custom template for all the categories to follow the same way? All of my category pages would look like this type of template? Or do I want to say, I have these posts, an example on my own site. I go when I am on other people's podcasts or something like that. I consider that as I stick it into a category on my site called speaking, and you can find all the things about when I've been speaking at something. So I might want to style up the category called speaking. So when I select category, it's going to ask me all of the categories. Which one do you want to modify? So I will modify all of them that are category A. And in this case, I can change out some things. So you'll see here, it says that I have archive title in here. And it's just going to say that information in that spot. So you'll be able to tell what the archive title is supposed to be. And you could customize, everything from, like, if I want to just really get creative with this, I could go wild. I can make this whole background a different color if I wanted to for this section. I'd have to change it inside of the groups and things, but I could go that far. So that's something else that shipped, is that ability to really dig into pretty much every taxonomy that you have at your disposal in WordPress. Up here will display. And if you roll your own custom post type, if you make your site support post formats, if you add in something like ACF or pods, all of those choices are going to display here. So you'll get every possible configuration of that taxonomy in this location. So you could really dig into making templates this way. That's something that I think is hugely powerful because, again, we could go the PHP route. We could go with it here too. Either of those is an option. Something else that's pretty fun that I started to mention a bit is, let me find one of the versions for single. Here is single with featured image. We'll grab that one. So this block is set to be post featured image. And I'm looking at what the regular post type would be with the featured image set to it. So right now it says post featured image here. But what if instead I wanted, instead of having post title and post featured image, what if I wanted that to be a cover block where I could put the text over top of the picture? What could I do with that? So what I'm actually going to do is, we'll keep this group here, but I'm going to add in another group, and we'll do a / group. There we go. So now I'll move that group up. And here, this is an empty group. Inside of this group, I am going to add in, let's see, I made the group before I put a paragraph in there. That's the challenge, right? We'll do it this way then. Hit enter. Oh, come on. Sometimes these toolbars get in the way. Paragraph. Okay. So I'm going to put the paragraph actually inside of this group. And I've gotten used to dragging and dropping to move it in, but you could expand it and drop it on top, and that's fine too. So in this location, I'm actually going to put in a cover block. And I have a couple choices here. I can set it to use my featured image for that cover block. And then inside of that, use the featured image with a cover block. I can have it, let's move that to be the post title there in that paragraph, and I'll get rid of the paragraph marker. We'll delete that one. Delete. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we have the post title, and maybe I want that post title to be like centered, and I could get all kinds of interesting with my settings over here. Make the title a link. Well, that wouldn't make sense there, but I might want to make the text a different color. And then I might want to define that the cover block uses a featured image. So I possibly would want to do some duotone effects with that. So right now it's just set to be default and there's no duotones. I mean, I could start adding some duotones to it, and you could guess that's going to look like Yost's colors. But what I actually like to do is I like to go in and make these kind of a transparent layer sometimes. So this is just a trick that I've come up with. For this color, I bring it down to, like, here is my transparent, and let's copy that hex. And then over here, let's put in, oh, come on. Sometimes it works. Sometimes I'm just being a little bit slow with this one. So there it is. There, put that in. Cool. So we have the same transparent layer, or I can make this even, bring it a little bit darker. And there we go. So there, and then that's looking good to me. I will zoom my screen back out so it's not quite so big so I see things. I'll hit save. And now if I go to the front of my site, let's see, here we go. Let's go, oh, view, right? I always forget this one. And then view site. And now let's go down to one of the images. Go to older posts, see what this did. Let's edit the post to make sure it has a featured image set. That might be my problem. I betcha I don't have a featured image on this example. Visual editor over here on the right side, featured image. Let's go set a featured image. Look in the media library. We've got some images in the media library, and I will select the San Francisco Bridge. We'll get the Golden Gate Bridge right in there. Hit update. Preview, new tab. And now because I put that overlay over it, now you probably, it looks like I still have a little bit of work to go, but you can tell that that overlay is over it. So this is just an example while I'm kind of live coding, but you can get in and dig around into it. I would want to see why editor. Let's go delete this one. Group, remove that one. Post title is here. I betcha I know what it is. If I'm not seeing, I'm seeing it there, but I don't have my post title displaying, which is what I want in that location. So I have a cover block. Let's just run a little test. This is a test of text. Save that. I'm wondering if, yeah, I see what's going on. So I'm editing a post, and the post is using a different template than the one that I am editing. Sometimes that happens, and so it can still be a little bit confusing. So it looks like, all right, I will say that this is with featured image. This is, I wonder if that's supposed to be, this is single with featured image. This is the post content with the featured image. So the thing to then check out is to see, edit post. Yep. This is where it gets so interesting. So here is my post for it. Template single. I want to switch over to with featured image. That's what's up. All right. Now if I look and see, and you could just go to edit plain old single. I do see there's my text, black category with widgets. And okay, so now I've got the text over the cover, the featured image. But the next spot is that I added a featured image and I set we'll do this, remove. That's what's up. Add in a cover up here. Cover is set to add media, use featured image. There we go. I wonder, we'll hit save. And then we'll hit this. Oh, it flickered. It flickered by. So it was there briefly. So now it's probably down to let's go back to some default stuff and say have no customizations. Refresh. There it is. All right. So it looks like my transparency was also kind of getting in the way. So there's my featured image inside of a cover block. And you could continue, tweaking and working and experimenting from there. But those are some of the fun things that came out in this release. Let's see what else. Oh, there is something that's actually pretty cool that I did get working. I'm actually going to go to show it to you from learn.wordpress.org. So if I go into learn.wordpress.org and I hit add new under lesson plans, this is a custom post type, but take a look. It asks me to pick a pattern. You can see that the very first thing that I did, it asks me, hey, go pick a pattern. You're like, well, how did you do that? There is actually a pretty simple way to do this one. I give you a link to, here is the code on GitHub for where that is. So I'll show you from GitHub side where that actually lives. If I were looking at the theme for WordPress, inside of the theme for learn.wordpress.org, and the code is all public and available. I'm not showing you all anything that's private. There is an area that says patterns. This is just a folder that you make called patterns. And when you make a folder called patterns, inside of that, you make a PHP file. In those PHP files that you make, it starts with the doc block. For those of you that are old school coders that have built these themes, you know the doc blocks very well. PHP, open at the top, some comments that tell us what this thing is, close out that line of PHP. In WordPress, it cares for the linting about having a space exactly in this location. All is good. We'll move on. And then the rest of this is similar to what I did earlier when I made that footer file. This is all things that you can make in a post, a page, or whatever, a custom post type. This is all kind of HTML with a lot of extra markup, comments in the markup. And it's just what we see. So the reason that I'm showing you this is that, let's say you would like to set a, whether it be a custom post type, a page, or on a post in particular. On Learn, we have a specific style that we want everyone to start with, specific headings, do this in this order. This isn't just a open-ended, everyone make their own format to these things. Our lesson plans are designed for meetup organizers around the globe to make use of, to teach to their meetup groups. So the preparation for all of this material is right there, ready to go, and teachers can use it too, which is great. So what we did is we actually made a version so that we've got it in English and in Greek. And as we get more contributors, we'll have more patterns available here so that people can select what language it is that they want all of these headings to be included in. You might choose to make a pattern. And one of the ones I want to make on my personal site is to make a book review post. So I want to make a pattern so that every time I go to make a book review, the same information is shown in the same order so that I follow some consistency. You could change this to be however you would like it to be. But if you want the end user that is going to write that post to have some guidelines to follow, you can go in and select, make a pattern, and that's going to display and be right there and available. So the code, again, just to do that, we made a folder called patterns inside of our theme, and then we put the code right inside of that. Remember, folks, if you were using one of the default themes and you ship an update, the folders you add are going to be there and they'll be fine. But any custom code you do somewhere else would not be. So what I showed you earlier about adding something to your functions.php file, an update inside of WordPress to that particular theme would wipe away my customization. Use good form, make child themes if you don't own it. If you do own the theme, if you've built it yourself, etc., then go ahead and code right inside of it. That would be fine. So you can make patterns, and those patterns will be available when someone goes in to write a post. That's pretty cool. And then one of the other things that I haven't shown you yet is this ability to do block locking. So block locking means that, let's go back to I'll get out of the post editor. Here we are inside of an area, inside of our site editor. And if I wanted to do block locking, that means maybe I don't want people to be able to muck about with some of these things if they are the user. Maybe I want them to be able to modify the post content, but nothing else inside of this post. So this is a demonstration. This is pre-filled content that you see here. But if I don't want the user to be able to modify, if I had something else additionally in here, maybe I don't want the user to be able to get into layers deep of things and change things from inside of the post editor. I could even go so far as what I did in Learn is that all of our headings are locked. We don't want them to be able to modify the name of those subheadings. That's the same everywhere. So to get into the block locking for that, to have that control, you now can find, if I just wanted to modify this one paragraph and make that locked, that's fine. But what happens when I start getting into like up here in the header and I've got this navigation menu and it's got the site title in it and then it's got the navigation and all these things deep. I don't want to have to lock everything one by one. Last release, we had to do it that way. This release, you can go to your nearest row or group or stack, and then you can lock all the way down. So by row, stack, or group, what I mean is if it's got one of these three icons, this is group, this is row, and this is stack. Any one of these three things that you see shown here will allow you to lock all the layers inside of it. So if you need a quick way to lock all of these infinite things, like, I've got sub menus inside of my nav bar that are layers deep, right? And if I don't want to have to select every single one, now I can just go right to my row and say lock. And it's going to ask me, do you want to lock everything inside as well? And I would say, yes, please. And then if I say, hey, Rob Carnes, I know that you would like access to the rest of the things on the site. I will let you in. And it would lock him. If I don't give him administrator privileges, it would make sure that he can't get in and do anything inside of the navigation menu. In order to modify that information, he would have to be an administrator. And so that just prevents him from getting to things a little bit more. And he doesn't have to, I don't have to go through and lock every single layer deep inside of things. It's just going to lock the whole way down the line, which is fantastic. So I feel like that's, again, one of those additional things that is a really good feature to get into there. I'd like to leave you all with, at the very end of this post, let me pull this one back. The very end of the post, we've got, at this location, some things. I'm using one of the demo templates from learn.wordpress.org to share with you all today. But in addition, you see that there are some courses now available. So if a lot of this felt foreign to you, what's going on, I don't know about a lot of these settings, I would suggest that you take a look through some of the courses that are shown here under Learn More about WordPress 6.1. And you'll see all of that content displaying below. So there are some courses that you could go through at your own pace to help you get up to speed. I want to double check before we're done for the day if anybody here has any further questions for me, if there's anything else I can help you with. Brian, yeah, block editor. How did you feel about getting on board with doing posts and pages, Brian? How was adopting using Gutenberg instead of posts and pages for you? I know that it could be a little bit of a learning curve sometimes to get on it. The good thing, Brian, is that because of our backwards compatibility, you're not going to see the old way of doing things be deprecated. Yeah, I could see that. You don't have as much control with the block editor. I would say sometimes you have more, though. It depends on the area. And I understand, like, with certain things, one of the things on my personal site that I wanted to do was to add a little drop shadow behind some boxes. So I had set up a group and put a border on them and I did some manual CSS work to give it that box shadow effect. But I now have that ability inside of the site editor. When I first put my site together, that was not really an ability. So, you can get in and sort of change around and see what's going on with some of those things. More features are continuing to come out. Remember, it is still claimed to be beta. And I think that's because there are some of those pieces that are missing, so that you would feel like you at least could get to those controls if you wanted to from inside of the WordPress editing experience, Brian. I think that eventually we'll see that beta feature drop. I'd like to see us get where we need to for accessibility. I will note, though, that from the front of site perspective, both the 2022 theme and now the 2023 theme are considered to be accessible when browsing from front of site. So that's a big improvement. And I think that we'll see over the next couple months, year of Gutenberg, the progression through the Gutenberg editing experience. We're halfway through, and we're at like what, four years, I think, so far on using Gutenberg. It's a big shift when you're powering that much of the internet. So I get it. Anyone else? Any other questions for you coming up? I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm going to draw attention now to next Monday on November 14th. I think in the time zone that most of us are in right now, for me, it would be Monday's event will be at 1 p.m. Eastern, but at noon Central Time. We've got some folks coming in from around the globe. So this is actually going to be 7 p.m. CET, Central European Time. My counterpart, Maya, is hosting this one. She is our EMEA representative, our Europe, Middle East, and Africa representative. Maya's hosting this one, but I'll be along for the ride for this one as well. We're talking about GitHub sponsorships and how folks that would like to contribute to WordPress could use GitHub sponsorships as a means of getting sponsored to do work on that. We're going to be joined on that particular event by Joe Dolson, who is contributing these days through the accessibility team, has previously been one of the accessibility team reps, helped organize for WordPress Accessibility Day, as well as Roselle, who is one of the dev advocates over at GitHub. She's busy today with GitHub Universe. Hope she's doing well with that. I saw some really good news coming out of GitHub Universe already. But Joe and Roselle will be with us that day, talking about how contributors can get sponsored through their GitHub sponsorships page, what that process looks like, and how you can also help back those people. If that's of interest, do make sure that you sign up over on events.godaddy.com. Again, thank you so very much for joining us. You'll be able to catch the replay of this event, and I will probably go and embed it right into the 6.1 recap post that I put together too. Thanks again for everyone being here. I'll catch you soon, folks.